Welcome to day 8 of Schlocktoberfest here on World Class Bullshitters. I sound different because I'm pissed the fuck off. I initially had this video with footage and spent 5 days working on this Twilight Zone top 10 list, but the cocksuckers over at CBS blocked it for some reason. Didn't have audio in it, spoke over the whole thing, checked with the fair use, and you know what? They don't fucking care. It's blocked in all countries. So you know what? Fuck them. I'm going to put this video out without the video, just the audio, but know that I'm not lazy and I'm not trying to cut corners. I had all the intentions in the world, the best intentions in the world, to put out a really cool Twilight Zone video because I absolutely love that fucking show. But thanks to the dick faces at CBS, that you'll never get to see it. So, don't watch Supergirl, fuck every show they've ever had, and enjoy the list.
Day 8.
Number 10. Time Enough at Last. Far-sighted bank teller and avid bookworm Henry Bemis works at his window in a bank while reading David Copperfield, which causes him to shortchange an annoyed customer. Bemis's angry boss, and later his nagging wife, both complain to him that he wastes far too much time reading. The next day, as usual, Henry takes his lunch break in the bank's vault, where his reading will not be disturbed. Moments after he sees a newspaper headline which reads, "H-bomb capable of total destruction," an enormous explosion outside the bank violently shakes the vault, knocking Bemis unconscious. After regaining consciousness, and recovering his thick glasses required for him to see, Bemis emerges from the vault to find the bank demolished and everyone dead. Leaving the bank, he sees the entire city has been destroyed, and realizes the nuclear war has devastated the Earth. Finding himself totally alone in a shattered world, with food enough to last him a lifetime but no one to share it with, Bemis succumbs to despair. As he attempts to commit suicide using a revolver, Bemis sees the ruins of the public library. Investigating it, he finds that the books are still intact and readable. All the books he could ever hope for are his for the reading. His despair gone, Bemis contentedly sorts the books he looks forward to reading for years to come. Just as he bends down to pick up the first book, he stumbles and his glasses fall off and shatter. In shock, he picks up the broken remains of the glasses. He is virtually blind without them, and states, "That's not fair. That's not fair at all." He bursts into tears, surrounded by books he can now never read. This is the most famous Twilight Zone twist. It has been parodied numerous times, but why is it so low on this list? Upon further inspection, the characters outside of Burgess Meredith aren't well acted. The wife is over the top, the bank manager overacts, and the entire legacy of this episode lives and dies by the twist. The iconic status of this episode is the only reason it made this list. No other episode will get such an easy pass. Number 9. The Living Doll. A woman buys her young daughter Christy a talking doll named Talkie Tina, in order to put her at ease around a man she recently married, Eric Streeter. Eric is hostile towards the child, but he begins to transfer his hostility to the new doll instead. When Eric finds himself alone with the doll, it tells Eric she hates him and warns him to be nice to it. At first, Eric thinks Annabelle is playing a trick on him. He places the doll in a trash can, but then receives a phone call and hears the doll's voice threatening to kill him. Eric attempts to destroy the doll using a vice, blowtorch, and saw, but fails each time. Eric then places the doll in a burlap sack and returns it to the trash can, weighing the lid down with bricks. He returns to his bedroom to find Annabelle packing to leave, unable to tolerate his hostility and irrational behavior any longer. She insists that Eric should see a psychiatrist. Eric maintains that the doll is talking to him, but offers to return it to Christy if Annabelle will stay. He returns to the garage and finds the doll still in the trash can. It says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I don't forgive you." Eric desperately urges it to be quiet and reluctantly returns the doll to Christy. Later that night, Eric is awakened by muffled noises from within the house. He tells Annabelle to stay in the bedroom and leaves to investigate. Christy is in bed, but Tina is gone. Skulking down the stairs, he trips over Tina, who is lying on one of the treads, and falls, sustaining fatal injuries. As he lies there dying, he sees the doll watching him. Attracted by the noise, Annabelle screams and runs down the stairs. She picks up Tina, who says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and you better be nice to me." Annabelle drops the doll in shock. One of the schlockier Twilight Zone episodes, but an instant classic. It influenced Child's Play and the myriad of other killer toy films. Telly Savalas does a great job as the abusive Eric Streeter. You can feel the tension inside the home as he lashes out angrily towards the wife Annabelle and his stepdaughter Christy. In many ways, you're happy to see him go, but at the same time, you can sympathize with him and what he's going through. Number 8. The Eye of the Beholder. Janet Tyler has undergone her 11th treatment in an attempt to look normal. The details of this treatment, other than that they are a series of injections, are not given. She is described as being not normal looking, and her face described as a pitiful twisted lump of flesh by the nurses and doctors, whose own faces are always in shadow off camera. The outcome of the procedure cannot be known until the bandages are removed. Tyler pleads with the doctor and eventually convinces him to remove the bandages early. As he prepares, the doctor develops great empathy for Tyler. The nurse verbally expresses concern for the doctor, and that she still is uneasy of Tyler's appearance. The doctor becomes displeased and questions why Tyler or anyone should be judged for their outer beauty. The nurse warns him not to speak that way because it may be considered treason. The doctor then removes the bandages, but the reaction of the doctors and nurses are of horror and disappointment. The procedure has failed, and her face has undergone no change at all. The camera pulls back to reveal that she's actually an attractive, beautiful woman by our standards. At this point, the doctors, nurses, and other people in the hospital are revealed to be hideous looking from our own perspective, with large, thick eyebrows, sunken eyes, swollen and twisted lips, and a wrinkled, pig-like snout nose. Distraught by the failure of the procedure, Tyler runs to the hospital as what is considered normal in this alternate society state are revealed. Flat-screen televisions throughout the hospital project an image of the state's despotic leader, giving a speech calling for greater conformity. Eventually, a handsome man, again by our standards, arrives to take a crying, despondent Tyler into exile. Before the two leave, the man confronts Tyler, saying that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. One of the all-time great Twilight Zone twists can be found in this episode. The theme is the norms of conformity, but it's the tension that builds up throughout this episode that puts it on this list. Who is this woman? Why is she so hideous? What's up with these doctors? It is the claustrophobic atmosphere, the dramatic lighting, and the style that makes this episode stand out among the rest. Number 7. Nick of Time. When Don and Pat Carter's automobile breaks down in Ridgeview, Ohio, they decide to have lunch at the Busy Bee Cafe while they wait. The booth they sit in has a fortune-telling machine on the table that answers yes or no questions for 1 penny each. Don asks the mystic seer if he's going to get a promotion at work. The card says that it has been decided in his favor. When Don calls the office, he discovers that the seer was right. Because of this initial success, Don asks the seer more and more questions. Pat begins to recognize that Don is taking the seer too seriously. Based on the seer's predictions, Don believes it's unsafe to leave the diner until after 3 p.m. Pat convinces him to leave a few minutes before 3, but the couple is almost struck by a car while crossing the street. A nearby clock shows that it is 3 p.m. After they calm down, Don wants to go back to the cafe for more answers. However, 2 women are sitting at their booth, so Don and Pat wait at the counter. Pat wants proof that the seer is legitimate, pointing out that it was Don who had brought up the matter of precisely 3 p.m. After reclaiming their booth, Don immediately asks the seer more questions. One of the things he wants to know is whether the car will be fixed by the end of the day. The seer answers in the affirmative, and, as if on cue, the mechanic steps into the diner to tell Don that his car is fixed. The breaking point comes when Don wants the seer to tell him whether they're going to live, and asks the seer every conceivable yes or no question to arrive at that information. Pat tries to break the spell the seer has over Don. After a persuasive speech from Pat, Don apologizes and then announces directly to the mystic seer that they're leaving to go as they please. After their cautious but uneventful exit, a slightly older couple enters the diner. The couple is noticeably beleaguered and distraught. Approaching the same mystic seer, the man asks the seer if they can ask more questions. After receiving an apparent affirmative answer, the man asks a series of questions including, "Do you think we might leave Ridgeview today?" The couple is obviously deflated by the answer to this question and others. While this is happening, Don and Pat leave Ridgeview. William Shatner stars in this classic episode. It makes the list for being eerie, but not over the top, as with many other Twilight Zone episodes. It was one that always caught my interest during the Twilight Zone 4th of July marathons. It's great, but not perfect. And for the record, there is no Ridgeview, Ohio. It takes me out of the episode strictly because I live in this state, but that's just a minor nitpick. It's a really fun episode that makes you wonder just how long that older couple has been waiting in that diner. Number 6. The Midnight Sun. The Earth's orbit has been perturbed, causing the Earth to slowly fall into the sun. Norma, an artist, and her landlady, Mrs. Bronson, are the last people in their New York apartment building. All their neighbors have either moved north where it is cooler or perished from the extremely high temperatures. At 20 minutes to midnight, it's 110 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. Norma and Mrs. Bronson try to support each other as they watch their life melt around them. The streets are deserted, water usage is limited to 1 hour a day, and their electricity is gradually being turned off. Food and water is scarce. A radio report announces that police have been moved out of the city and that citizens must fend for themselves. As the temperature rises to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, the two women grow weaker and weaker. Norma burns her hand on a windowsill, and Mrs. Bronson becomes psychologically unstable. A man breaks into the building through the roof door. The man's voice calls out from the outside, demanding entry. Norma threatens him with a gun, and as they hear him walk away, Mrs. Bronson unlocks the door, and the stranger, still present, forces his way into the apartment. He pulls the revolver from Norma and drinks all of the water. He calms down, and after he has quenched his thirst, begs for their forgiveness, claiming that he is an honest, decent man, and that it's the heat that has driven him insane. He throws the revolver away and describes the recent death of his wife and newborn child from overheating and complications during labor. He insistently begs for forgiveness until Norma acknowledges him with a nod. Then he leaves the apartment building. In an attempt to console Mrs. Bronson after the man leaves, Norma shows her an oil painting of a waterfall cascading into a lush pond. Mrs. Bronson, unable to cope with the heat, deliriously claims she can feel the coolness and delightfully splashes in the imaginary water before collapsing to the floor and dying. Norma sits in shock as the thermometer surges past 120 degrees Fahrenheit and shatters. The paint on Norma's oil paintings begin to melt before her eyes, and she screams, and then collapses to the ground. The scene cuts to the apartment at night with a heavy snowfall outside the window. The same thermometer reads -10 degrees Fahrenheit. Norma, bedridden with a high fever, is tended to by Mrs. Bronson and the doctor. The plot about Earth moving towards the sun is revealed only to be a fever dream. In reality, the Earth is moving away from the sun, and the world is freezing to death. Like most episodes, this is an allegory for the modern nuclear apocalypse. This episode makes the list purely because of how fun it is. Yes, the subject matter is dark, but the unintentional humor from Mrs. Bronson livens up the rather dour outing. It's one I recommend to everyone who's ever going to watch The Twilight Zone. Number 5. Will the real Martian please stand up? During a snowstorm, 2 state troopers are investigating a crash in the woods, described by a woman as the landing of a flying saucer. They follow the footprints leading from the crash site to a diner where a group of bus passengers en route to Boston are waiting for word that a bridge over the river ahead is safe to cross. The patrons of the roadside eatery are the 7 bus passengers: 2 married couples, a businessman, a professional dancer, and a crazy old man. The bus driver insists that there are only 6 passengers, but it's the businessman, Mr. Ross, that thinks he must be mistaken. This creates an instant and mutual suspicion among the stranded travelers as the passengers try to guess which among them is the alien. It is suggested that since there was only one set of tracks from the lake, that the 2 married couples be paired off and excluded. The driver then vouches for the dancer. This only leaves Mr. Ross and the crazy old man as suspects. Several odd and sinister events occur immediately. The jukebox starts to play and stops on its own. The lights flicker on and off, and most alarmingly, sugar bowls begin to explode at the tables. As the state troopers draw their weapons, a payphone rings and the caller informs them that the bridge is safe to cross. The troopers, driver, and passengers all depart the diner together. Shortly afterwards, Mr. Ross returns to the diner alone and tells the cook, Mr. Haley, that the bridge was not safe at all and has collapsed, killing the troopers and all the occupants of the bus. Mr. Haley asks Mr. Ross how he could have made it out of the river without getting wet. Mr. Ross wonders what the word wet means, revealing a third arm under his overcoat. He explained that he used illusions to make the clothes appear dry and that caused the other strange events, including the phone call, with the all clear on the bridge. Mr. Ross is a Martian scout, sent to Earth as part of an effort to colonize the planet. Instead of being scared, Mr. Haley removes his paper cap to reveal a third eye on his forehead, and calmly states that he's a Venusian. His people have already started a colony on Earth and intercepted the arriving Martians. Mr. Haley laughs at the dumbfounded Mr. Ross as the episode ends. Much like another episode on this list, Cold War paranoia plays a part in this episode. It made the list because of the fun and hokey nature of the twist, and the over-the-top performances. When you think of the Twilight Zone, and you think of the crazy science fiction elements that reflect on contemporary society, this episode should come to mind. Number 4. To Serve Man. The Canamites, a race of 9-foot-tall aliens, land on Earth and address the United Nations, vowing that it is their race's motive to come to Earth solely to aid humanity. The most skeptical of UN delegates is from the Soviet Union, who asks if the Canamites come with any ulterior motives. After answering questions, the Canamites depart and leave behind a book in the Canamite language. U.S. government cryptographer Michael Chambers is called in to decode the book. The most skeptical of international leaders begin to soften as the aliens' benevolence shines through and the Canaanites share their advanced technology, quickly putting an end to many of Earth's greatest woes, including hunger, energy shortages, and nuclear proliferation. The aliens even transform deserts into large booming fields. Trust in the Canaanites seemed to be justified when Patty, one of the members of the cryptographer staff led by Michael Chambers, cracks the title of the Canaanite book, To Serve Man. Soon, humans are volunteering for trips to the Canaanites' home planet, which is portrayed as a paradise. They even have their own form of baseball, or something like it. Canaanites now have embassies in every major city in the world. With the Cold War ended, the code-breaking staff has no real work to do, but Patty is still trying to work out the meaning of the text To Serve Man. The day arrives for Chambers' excursion to the Canaanites' home planet. Just as he mounts the spaceship's boarding stairs, his staffer Patty appears. He waves smiling, but she runs towards him in great agitation. While being held back by a Canaanite guard, Patty cries, "Mr. Chambers, don't get on that ship." The rest of the book, To Serve Man, it's a cookbook, implying that the book is not an instruction manual on how to assist man, but rather how to properly cook him for consumption. Chambers tries to run back down the spaceship stairs, but a Canaanite blocks him, and the stairs retract and the ship takes off. This episode is funny, zany, over the top, and has Jaws from James Bond. To Serve Man is not a deep Twilight Zone episode, but it's a fun Twilight Zone episode. If you ever need an enjoyable, light way to introduce someone into this series, start here. Number 3. The Masks. A very wealthy old man named Jason Foster is dying. On the night of Mardi Gras, he is greeted by a visit from his daughter Emily and her family, husband Wilfred, son Wilfred Jr., and his daughter Paula. All four have various terrible traits, including Emily, who is a coward and a self-centered hypochondriac. Wilfred, a successful businessman, is introverted and greedy, thinking of everything in money terms. Paula is extremely vain. And Wilfred Jr. is an oafish, sadistic bully who enjoys causing pain and suffering to other people and animals. Moreover, it is clear that they are only there in order to claim Jason's fortune once he dies. Jason is not shy about his opinions of his family and openly insults each of them. In an act of apology, he says that he has a special Mardi Gras party planned for the group that night. At dinner, the family members gather in Jason's study, where he offers them a special one-of-a-kind mask. These masks, which he said are crafted by an old Cajun, are very ugly creations. Jason informs his daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren that it is a Mardi Gras tradition to wear masks that are the exact opposite of a person's true personality. Thereupon, he says sarcastically that these masks are just that. Jason offers the mask of a sniveling coward to Emily, a miserable miser to Wilfred, a twisted buffoon to Wilfred Jr., and a self-obsessed narcissist to Paula. He himself dons a skull mask, claiming that the opposite of life is death. The family is reluctant to wear these ugly masks, until Jason quotes the proviso in his will. Unless all four of them don the masks, they leave with nothing but train fare back to Boston. The foursome comply in spite of their disgust. As the hours tick by, all four beg to be allowed to take off the masks, claiming that they are worse than uncomfortable. They are unbearable. Yet their pleas are wasted on Jason, who delivers his final tirade to his family as he dies. The foursome rejoices in the fact that they are now rich, until they remove their disguises and find to their horror that their faces have conformed to the hideous shapes of the masks. Classic Twilight Zone. Beyond that, there's not much else to say. The symbolism is laid on pretty thick, but this is an episode that must be watched. You can't claim to have seen the Twilight Zone until you've seen the masks. Number 2. Nightmare at 20,000 feet. On a flight home, nervous passenger Bob Wilson thinks he sees a gremlin on the wing of the plane. Startled, Bob tries to alert his wife and the flight crew of the gremlin's presence, but every time someone else looks out the window, the gremlin leaps out of view. Furthermore, this is Bob's first flight since his nervous breakdown 6 months earlier, which also occurred on an airplane. Bob realizes that his wife has started to think he needs to go back to the sanitarium, but his bigger concern is that if nothing is done about the gremlin, it will damage the airliner and cause it to crash. After repeated attempts to warn the crew, Bob grows desperate, steals a sleeping police officer's revolver, and opens the window marked auxiliary exit to shoot the gremlin. Bob succeeds, despite nearly being blown up the aircraft himself. Once landed, everyone believes Bob has gone insane. As he is whisked away in a straitjacket, Bob tells his wife that he is alone in his knowledge of what happened during the flight. The narrator, Rod Serling, informs the viewers that the truth will be widely known, and the final shot reveals why. Damage to the aircraft caused by the gremlin is visible. This is probably the most classic and parodied Twilight Zone episode. It stars William Shatner as Bob Wilson, and this is the classic tale of the insane man who was right all along. It deserves this spot on the list because it is iconic, memorable, and just plain well done. You can feel Bob's sanity slipping from him right before your eyes. William Shatner does an excellent job in this episode. It's a far cry from his over-the-top Captain Kirk persona, but he still has that Shatner charisma. There are so many hokey elements to the Twilight Zone, but this episode stands out as one of the best the series has to offer. Number 1. The monsters are due on Maple Street. Maple Street is full of playing children and adults talking when suddenly a shadow passes over, accompanied by a roar and a flash of light. Several adults notice, but there is no alarm. However, the residents soon discover that their power has been cut, affecting stoves, lawnmowers, and phones. They gather together in the street to discuss the situation. Pete Van Horn volunteers to walk out of the neighborhood to discover the extent of the problem and goes to check the gas station. His neighbor, Steve Brand, wants to go into town, but Tommy, an irritating local boy, catalyzes the situation and urges him not to leave the street. Tommy has read a story of an alien invasion causing similar controversy and says that the monsters do not want them to leave the street. Furthermore, in the story, the aliens are living as a family that appears to be human. The power outage is meant to isolate the neighborhood. Meanwhile, another resident, Les Goodman, tries to unsuccessfully start his car. He gets out and begins to walk back to the other residents, and the car starts on its own. One woman begins to discuss his late nights spent standing in the garden looking up at the sky. Les claims only to be an insomniac. Later that night, Steve, acting as the voice of reason, tries to defuse the situation and prevents it from becoming a witch hunt. Les warns that the others are creating something ugly that they will not be able to control. Charlie Farnsworth, one of the loudest and most aggressive residents, pressures Steve about his hobby, including the radio that no one has ever seen. Suspicion falls on Steve as he sarcastically remarks that he talks to monsters from outer space on his radio. Steve and the other neighbors continue to argue. Panic builds as the darkness descends and a shadowy figure is seen walking towards them. Charlie, now hostile, grabs a shotgun and immediately shoots the shadow, thinking it to be one of the alleged monsters. When the crowd reaches the fallen figure, they realize it was Pete Van Horn returning from his scouting mission. The shot had hit him in the chest and killed him instantly. Although Charlie insists that he did not know and was trying to protect everyone, no one believes him. Suddenly, the lights in Charlie's house come on, and he panics as the crowd begins accusing him of being both a murderer and a monster responsible for the power outage. Charlie makes a run for his house while the others chase him, throwing stones at him. One hits Charlie in the head, creating a bleeding gash. Terrified, Charlie attempts to deflect suspicion onto Tommy, the boy who had originally suggested the alien infiltration. Several neighbors agree, as Tommy is the only one who knew about the aliens' plans. Lights begin flashing on and off in the houses throughout the neighborhood. Lawnmowers and car engines start and stop for no apparent reason. The mob becomes hysterical, with terrified residents smashing windows and taking up weapons as the situation devolves into an all-out riot. Some residents take up firearms and start shooting at anyone they can. The scene cuts to a nearby hilltop, where it is revealed the mysterious meteor that had flown overhead is indeed an alien spaceship. Its inhabitants, two alien but humanoid observers, are watching the riot on Maple Street while using a device to manipulate the neighborhood's power. They comment on how easy it is to create paranoia by turning on and off the electricity, and conclude that the easiest way to conquer the planet is to let people become their own worst enemies. This is arguably the smartest episode of The Twilight Zone. Besides being an allegory for Cold War paranoia, it is also a study in human psychology. Man is a dangerous creature when scared, and this episode shows how little it takes for him to become irrational. The Cold War may have ended, but the witch hunts are still around. Be it a terrorist, a commie, or what have you, society is always looking to weed out those who don't belong. The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street is the epitome of a societal breakdown, and truly the best of what the Twilight Zone has to offer. So that's the list. Did we get all your favorites? If we didn't, tell us in the comments section down below. Now remember, these are just my personal favorites, but I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of what good Twilight Zone episodes are. Now a lot of older listeners will say, what about Walking Distance? Well, I'm still in my 20s, and walking distance really doesn't mean anything to me, so I just want to get that out of the way right now. But, if you've never seen The Twilight Zone, and you have Netflix, you have no excuse. Every episode of The Twilight Zone, save for Season 4, is on Netflix as this is being recorded. Take this list, go watch these top 10 in order, and tell me what you think. This has been Day 8 of Schlocktoberfest here on World Class Bullshitters, and we'll be back tomorrow with more.